Hey there everybody, it's Mark Crilley. I'm back with another How to Draw video. This is part 3 in an ongoing series of videos showing the creation of an illustration from beginning to end with absolutely no time-lapse. Time-lapse is forbidden in this series of videos. And I'm going to begin. This is going to be the video in which I refine the color. Last week we did a base layer of watercolor. Right now I'm erasing some of the guidelines from the very first video, sort of just cleaning things up with a kneaded eraser here before I go in with colored pencils to begin tightening things up, and in some cases actually adding colors that were not added by way of watercolor in that, in video number 2, I guess would be. So let's go ahead and jump into this. I'm going to grab my trusty black Prismacolor and start with defining some of the lines that compose this fence back here. And I don't want to get too harsh of an outline, and so I'm not pressing down real hard. But by giving this an outline and having the trees and the hills beyond them not have any outline at all, that allows those other, the trees and the hills to fall back and appear quite distant. Whereas you can see even right now with just a few lines added, suddenly this fence comes forward quite substantially, becomes a part of the middle ground or even the foreground. So yeah, just keep that in mind when you are doing an illustration. Anything that gets a thick line around the edge is going to come forward quite substantially, so you sort of make decisions accordingly. And now I am going to move on to getting more outlines onto this umbrella and the female character who is sort of at the heart of this illustration. One of the things that I feel like I have to make some decisions about is, do I leave her completely with this muted, colorless kind of thing, or do I try to choose a couple of things that maybe get a little dash of color? I remember my teacher, my mentor back in college, David Small, talking about the if you add just a little dash of color here and there, that can be plenty, and that really livens up an illustration. Whereas if your illustration is just filled with color all over the place, they're sort of competing with one another, at least in his view, and so that he would sort of deliberately just add a little dash of color here and there. So I think I might do that, might attempt that technique with this illustration. But for now, I'm just going to sort of do the outline. I decided to add a pocket here to her raincoat and get the blue jeans. Yes, I have held true to my promise to draw a character that wasn't wearing a skirt, a female character. It is true in my videos the female characters do tend to always be wearing skirts of some kind. This time it's blue jeans, people. I've made a breakthrough. Finally. And I am noticing, and some of you may be noticing as well, that I had forgotten to add any watercolor to her hand here. That's something I will probably have to fix later on. But I was looking at these boots earlier, and I feel like they maybe need to extend a little further, so I'm dropping this line down a bit past where I had done the watercolor, and you can kind of get away with that sort of stuff. I'm always sort of making little corrections of things as I go along. The reason I did that is I figure she needs to be on a line that connects with this so that we feel she's standing in front of it. If her shoes come to a stop up there, it feels like she's standing next to it and looking off into space in a weird direction. So that's why I did that. And now I'm going to go in, and you can see as I come to this shrine area that I'm allowing myself to move the lines much more quickly. Why? Because I don't feel so nervous about issues of anatomy like I did over here. I'm sort of like, oh boy, if I get a line in the wrong place, I'm sunk. Whereas over here, I can say, hey, you know, this is a beat-up old shrine anyway, so it doesn't need to look perfect. So yeah, I feel like I can sort of move the pencil much more quickly. Now I do want to get some sense of the structure of this thing. What is supporting that rooftop? Well, I see that I'm imagining 3 different wooden beams, and maybe there must be some sort of cross beams that are supporting it. So we may need to go back in with a bit of watercolor in the polishing phase, next week's video, to fix some of this stuff. But anyway, I've had a lot of fun working on this series of videos. I feel kind of released in a way, in a funny way, because I don't need to edit any of this, right? It's all pure, raw footage. And don't worry, I'm not going to suddenly start doing all my videos this way. I think there is a place for videos that have time-lapse, that move a little more quickly than this series of videos has. But just to let you know, I'm using a pencil sharpener here, a handheld little simple pencil sharpener. Some people will say, how do you keep your pencils so sharp? And it is true that a lot of times I'm sharpening it in a little break, you know, that gets hidden in the edit, and so there may create this illusion that my pencils remain magically sharp. They really don't. I'm having to sharpen them like anyone else. Anyway, going in here, adding a few more lines here and there. What if we used up about 6 minutes? Oh, this is not bad, though. I mean, this means we have plenty of time to do other stuff. I think these videos are starting to clock in at more like 25 minutes per video rather than 20 minutes. But hey, you know, if you've been watching this long, you're one of the dedicated few, the committed people who are willing to watch these longer videos. Anyway, just adding a few more kind of impressionistic, like I've been using that word a lot in this series, dashing lines in here in a way that's not super careful, because that's kind of the approach that I want. I want this to have a light approach, not something that was labored over too much. But now it's time to switch to a different colored pencil. I'm going to use a Prismacolor very thin olive green to start adding a bit more definition to the grass here now, especially these blades of grass near the foreground, I think, are going to need to get considerably darker. And I've been inspired a little bit by Miyazaki films like Totoro and so forth. They are so good at illustrating grass, clouds, dirt roads, all of that stuff. They're just so good at that. So if you want to learn how to draw grass, see if you can pick up one of these, like The Art of Totoro, it's a book that I have, allows you to really pore over these illustrations and get some sense of how they did it. Not that my grass that I'm doing right now is going to hold up to that level, but suffice to say, the closer we get to the viewer, the more defined I want this grass to be. Further away, I'm going to lighten up on the pencil. In fact, I might not even touch some of those areas that are further away. But one thing that I have learned from Miyazaki, sounds like he's a friend of mine. I was talking to Hayao the other day, and he said to me, now one of the things that I've learned by just studying the illustrations is that he varies the types of plants that you see in the grass. So there might be these sort of plants that have individual leaves like this. I hope this is showing up. I know some people are probably going to complain that this is all not a high definition video, but again, when you do a 20-minute video, if you try to upload it in HD, boy, it just takes hours and hours for it to upload, and that's really the explanation for why these longer videos are not in the very highest definition. But I may do a sort of a compilation video that brings all of these individual ones together in time-lapse. I haven't been able to do any time-lapse during this thing, but I may allow myself to do some once it's all completed. Do a time-lapse version, upload that, in HD, and then if you want a closer look at sort of the quality of this line work, or the lack thereof, that time-lapse video may allow you to do that, and you sort of hit pause and so forth to get a closer look. Maybe I can also upload a version of this to my DeviantArt, which would allow you to look at it more carefully. But I feel like you're sort of getting the idea of what I would be doing with the colored pencils in terms of the grass. I think there's really going to be a lot more to be done with this in the polishing phase. Let me move on now to the road. I'm pulling out a brown colored pencil that is by the same company, and again, I really don't like people to feel like I need to buy the Prismacolor. No, just go to your art store, say, hey, what color pencils do you have that you recommend? And just the one thing to watch out for is sometimes colored pencils can be, the lead of the colored pencil is quite dark, or quite hard, and when you push down on the paper, you really have to push down hard. That's what these pencils are like, the very thin, within the Prismacolor brand, whereas their standard pencils are much softer. It's very easy to get the color come off, but then they're less precise, so there's sort of a trade-off there. I feel like I said that exact same thing in a recent video. Crilley, you are repeating yourself. But now I'm starting to get to more of like adding little rocks and stuff, especially in the foreground here, adding a bit more texture to this road. This is starting to get into the realm of polishing territory, which I'll probably be doing a lot more with on next week's video. But I thought I'd show you at least a little of how this can be done with colored pencil. I'm definitely going to be coming back into these puddles here and adding some watercolor for her reflection. Another thing that I realized I kind of forgot in last week's video to add the color of the reflection in those pools of water. And I do have a plan to use pastels up here. I think I'll hold off and do that in the polishing phase. Let me switch to another green. I'll switch back to the green and do just a little bit more definition to these trees, just up at the upper edges. I don't want them to be really clear. I don't want a hard outline at the edge, but I want to bring them forward just a little away from the distant hill, so that the hill seems very far away, and we have maybe 3 or 4 layers of distance, right? You could say that the grass is going to be very near to us, the female character in the shrine a little further away, the fence farther away, then the trees, and then finally way back to the hill, and I guess you could arguably say the sky is beyond that. So you get all these different layers, and that sort of gives you this feeling of depth, makes the illustration more interesting to look at, hopefully. I was talking about adding a dash of color to the female character here in the middle of the illustration, and I think I might go ahead and do that right now. What if we say that she has a kind of a reddish scarf? I don't know if this is the red that I want. Let's switch over here to a kind of a brighter red. I'm going to give her a reddish scarf here that gives us just a little dash of color. And a lot of times when you do something like this, you feel like you want to balance that out somewhere. And I'm not exactly sure how I ought to do that, but I think what I will do is, let's say that her boots have red trim and red soles, and that will kind of balance that out a little bit so that the red is not just isolated in her scarf. Now again, sometimes artists want to even balance it out further and get the red to be picked up somewhere else. So I could say, what if these flowers over here have a touch of red to them? And then we get a little bit of a sort of a triangular balance of colors going on, from the red of the flowers to the red of the soles of the boots and up to the scarf, and those sort of 3 areas sort of balance each other out. Anyway, I thought that was something worth trying because it is otherwise going to be a fairly monochromatic illustration. By design, I kind of wanted this one. It's going to be a rainy day. Of course, some people may be saying, hey, where's the rain? This is a rainy day. I don't see any rain, man. I don't know if I will decide to have the rain be visible in the polishing phase video next week. I may or I may not decide to do that. Well, now I'm going in with the black Prismacolor again to add yet more definition to the female character. I'm darkening in her hair. The more we do with the colored pencil, the more it comes forward and seems closer to us. So I feel like I can sort of commit to that idea with almost the entirety of her figure. We do indeed want her to seem fairly close to us. The only thing closer, as I said before, will be some of the grass in the foreground. But I'm shading things in here. I think, generally speaking, I feel like maybe, it's diffuse light. We don't know exactly where the light is coming from, but I suppose I'm going to decide that there is coming slightly more from the upper left. And so that allows me to decide on adding more shading on the right-hand side, on her right-hand side. And that's why this other boot over here is quite dark as well. But I don't think we're going to have a defined shadow on the ground just because it's not, the sun is not coming through. I'll just maybe put a little bit of shadow on the ground, but leave it at that. And what have we got here? 16 and a half minutes. We actually have time, happily, to work back into things and add further definition with the colored pencil. So I'm going to work into the underside of the roof of this shrine. Maybe even get a little bit of line work visible there to help reveal the structure of that. And then I can maybe come over to this other edge of the obelisk, what I've been calling the obelisk all this time. Really should have looked that up before I started doing this video. What, Crilley, you can't look something up? You can't Google it? What is your problem? I've been doing a lot of the Brooklyn guy on this video. What happened to the surfer dude? Yeah, that's a good question, man. What did happen to the surfer dude? Have you forsaken me, Mr. Crilley? You gotta bring it back, man. Hang 10. So we're darkening in. I've decided for this one, and it's kind of funny because I said the upper left. Maybe it's the left, but it's back a little because over here I'm kind of committed to a lot of shading on this side. It may be just inconsistent shading, which I have been known to do. I think I did that on the hair video a couple of weeks ago. So anyway, these illustrators, they think they're professional, but boy, do they still make mistakes. So you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to add just a little definition along the upper edge, sort of suggest that there's almost a spine to this roof. Again, I'm sure there's a better word for that. The spine of the roof? Crilley, will you please stop making up words? And with the little bit of extra time that we have here, I can indeed go back into this road, which kind of pleases me, actually, because I think the more we define by way of colored pencil, the more gravelly and solid this road will appear to be. So I'm going back in with the brown colored pencil in a pretty quick way. Now, one thing that I may do as sort of a final part of this video before we start winding things down is to get an area of darkness at the base of the grass, because in next week's polishing video I'm going to attempt to pull off a sort of Miyazakian style of grass, of painting the grass that I've noticed, and it seems to me they do it in a couple of steps where they build up an area of darkness and then get some gouache, a sort of opaque green gouache. I'll be doing this next week. I don't know why I'm talking about it so much right now, but in order to to do some sort of foreground grass, blades of grass, what they will do is sort of build up an area of darkness. I'm switching back to my black Prismacolor here. Build up an area of darkness at the base of the grass here, so as to go back in on top of it with, like I said, a sort of an opaque greenish paint. And I'm even going to smear it up a little. But that's what this is for. It is, of course, shadows, you know, cast by the grass itself, I suppose, but it is sort of laying the groundwork for me to go back on top of this with opaque green in next week's video. And I may even put some in here in this lower corner here, sort of darken it up a little, and we'll see if we can make use of the opaque green in this area as well to get some grass that's really quite near us. I feel like we could benefit from that over here as well, so I'm going to go ahead and darken this whole area. We want this grass to seem close to us compared to the grass in the distance there. But maybe we're finally coming to the end of things here, coming up on 21 minutes. I feel like I kind of got everything where I want it to be in terms of refining the watercolor that I put down last week and giving it a little more definition. I'm just going in and shading with the brown pencil to get this lower section of the road to just come a little closer to us. And I can see that there is a lot of work yet to be done in the polishing phase next week that I think will really help carry this to completion. I just want to say a special thank you to anyone who's stuck with this series of videos this far. I know it has required patience to watch me work again and again on the same illustration. I do hope it is useful. I hope that that people actually watch these videos, because if they don't, then I will learn the lesson. Mark, don't do 4 weeks in a row of the same subject. People get bored and tired of it, and they stop watching. But, you know, we'll see. I think it was a worthy experiment anyway, and we'll see how it goes. I think it's time, though, for me to kind of wind this down for now. I'll go ahead and lay down this pencil. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will be back with another one real soon.